Yo, what is up, y'all? I didn't end up finishing that thing last night, so close this down. I didn't end up finishing this last night. I don't know. I just ran into not a wall. It wasn't something technically that wasn't working, but just kind of ran out of steam. And so yeah, I don't actually remember what time I got off, but I ended up going to shoot some hoops. I think I came back after that, and then I hung out for a bit. Then I went to the gym with my mum, and she got mad and she left. Or not mad, sorry. She was mad when we were going there. She was mad when we were going there because they got these new puppies. And yesterday, my dad, so my brother Jordan and I were in town, and we don't live here. We live out in Alberta, in Edmonton, and basically, uh, my dad and my brother Jordan went to town yesterday. Or not to town, but to Kelowna, which is pretty close to where we're at. It's like 45 minutes, 50-minute drive. But they went there and played, hit some balls indoors, like some golf simulator. Even though we live on a golf course and the course is opening next week, but Jordan actually has to go back to Alberta on Wednesday, I believe. And I'm sticking around here because I have just like a little kind of informal chat with this guy that works at this company, and they've had a position open for a while that I've kind of had my eye on, and I haven't actually applied for any jobs since I've left this boot camp, and I kind of just want to. I've been working on my fundamentals, as most of you have seen, and I should actually put my GitHub in the link to this, if people want to check that out. But yeah, a lot of my focus, I've said this many times, and so if you've watched a few of these videos, you've probably heard, and I mean, honestly, I don't know how many people actually watch these. I look at it and it's like, I get around, 3 to 8 views per. I know one I had 15, and I was like, damn, bro, that was like my third or fourth one. I was like, oh shit, dude, I'm going big. But yeah, I've kind of been focused on like the fundamentals because I'm trying to, get a job ultimately, and I don't want to. How do you say? I'm not sure. I think there's something so with this book that I read a while ago that was really kind of formative for my thinking, and it definitely was just like, wow, it's a big brain book. This guy kind of talks about. The book's called by David Deutsch. The book's title is The Beginning of Infinity, which I freaking love that name of. And I'm Métis, and so the Métis Nation's flag is a blue background with a white infinity symbol in the middle of it, which I just think is so cool. I think it's like the coolest flag out there, and a large part of my identity is being Métis because you kind of grow up in between these two worlds, being mixed race, right? Like I'm Indigenous on my father's side, and a few other things. He's not 100% Indigenous, and that's I don't even know why I said 100%. This idea of blood quantum is such a fucking racist idea to me. It's crazy. If you're not from Canada, or if you aren't familiar, basically there's this thing called like blood quantum, which says like, hey, if you want your Indian status is what they call it, or your treaty status rather, I guess nowadays, you have to have like a certain amount of blood quantum that is Indigenous to be considered Indigenous, with respect to the treaty card. Which is just a fucking racist idea, man. You're like, damn, that's like how you put in law, like separates the people from their peoples. But anyways, The Beginning of Infinity, it's by the guy David Deutsch, and I watched a lot of interviews, and generally I've been somebody that seeks out a lot of advice, and maybe don't have the most like confidence in my own abilities or my own sort of reasoning, sort of whatever it may be. And I watched this one interview and I was like, damn, bro. Because here's the thing, because I get so much advice and because I'm such a seeker and I read all the time, I'm constantly consuming information and trying to like build more knowledge, which is a trap in its own right, but I am who I am and I'm not fighting that. Because I read so much, I feel like I have, knowledge to share and I'm always trying to share it. And I think that there's a time and place for that. And unfortunately, a lot of the time kind of comes up in my interpersonal relationships. So I'm often giving advice to people. And this David Deutsch, he was in this interview and he said, yeah, I don't really give advice. He's like, it's not really like a good relationship dynamic to have with somebody. I've just thought about that a lot since I heard that. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe that is right. Maybe giving advice is a weird relationship dynamic. So I'm trying to get away from that. But on some level, I do have to accept who I am, and I do want to give advice, and I do think that like getting advice is good. So what you do with that advice is a different thing, obviously, and you probably shouldn't internalize too much of other people's advice because I think there's very rarely a right and wrong answer, and you kind of just got to do what you think is best for yourself at a particular time. Where was I going with this? I don't even know. But where was I going with that? I don't remember. But anyways, my dad went to town to play golf with my brother, and my mom and dad just got these puppies, which you saw on the stream yesterday. If you were, I don't remember what time they came on. There was several hours of stream yesterday, so maybe nobody saw it. But yeah, puppies are a lot. My mom's, she's retired, 60 years old. Oh, look at that. Speak of the devils. Look. Speak of the devil. Come here. I was literally just talking about you guys. Okay. There you go, stream. Speak of the devils. There they are. But my dad went to town yesterday, and my mom had to watch these two little demons, and they're a lot. They're very whiny, a lot of energy. I got an older dog, Kawhi, who I'm sure people have heard of now. But Kawhi doesn't like them. At first he was cool with them, but now they're just always bugging him and barking on him, and I'm petting these guys a lot, so I'm sure he's jealous. He's a very needy and jealous dog, so I'm sure he doesn't like them very much because of that. But he's been getting angry with them. So my mom just was all testy yesterday, and I don't know. She ended up leaving. She wasn't feeling good, so she left the gym, and I was there, and had a good workout. Came back, ate some food, and just wasn't really in the mood to kind of program, so didn't end up finishing this. So that is what we're doing today. Oh, Kawhi's coming. Hey, buddy. Hey, Kawhi. What's up, man? What's up? Hello. Hello. Okay, guys. There you go. Alright. Okay. So we're gonna finish this thing. There's only a few more of these left. I've never actually deployed something, so I am gonna try to deploy this, which is part of their part of the video. So that's cool. I was working on this morning. I've already been working on it for a few hours, or like an hour, and I want to keep going. So I thought, well, I might as well stream it. Basically, let's show you the GitHub, and I'll quickly walk through. It's good for me to introduce what is happening here, or what has changed since yesterday's stream. Remix tutorial, 20 commits. fall in love, to fall in love. Oh yeah, so when I came on this morning, okay, so we have app and we have Prisma. Yeah, so when I came on this morning, in the demo they had the admin email was set to Rachel at Remix Run. So I think I am gonna try to adapt this to my own portfolio website. Ultimately, why I ended up using Remix, or why I looked at Remix, is because I was like, well, I want to make a portfolio website, and I know that blogging is part of what I want to do in it. Is like, I don't know if it's sharing content necessarily. Like, I don't think I'm trying to be a content creator, but I'm really sort of fixated on this idea of learning out loud, because I have this hypothesis that the world, maybe not the world, what? My hypothesis is that, my hypothesis is that, particularly with the advent of something like ChatGPT, I think engineers are just going to become much more productive. And I also think that, well, a few things. I think engineers are going to become more productive. And so I think is going to be, it already is, particularly GPT-4, which seems like much more nuanced. I think GPT-3, you could kind of put some stuff, or GPT 3.5, you could put stuff into it and it would give you kind of like basic answers. But GPT-4 seems much more sort of, I don't know if intuitive is the right word, but just more powerful, and you can kind of give it context and kind of tell it, like, here's how I want you to think about this. And I think it actually has the ability to follow the flow of the conversation a little bit better, so you can actually kind of interact with it more and help it help you. So I think that's going to make great programmers much more efficient. And so there might be actually like a divide between a not great engineer and a great engineer, and that divide's only going to grow. And so I think it's really important to just be a solid engineer. And so I don't think you want to rely on these things too much, because they do kind of ruin your sense-making organs. And that's definitely something I've fallen victim to. I've noticed for sure. Is like, even in my university time, I took a bunch of math courses. I was never talented at math, but I could always kind of hack my way through, because, and it's unfortunate, well, not unfortunate, but sadly GPT came out well after I finished university. Not well, but a few years after I finished university. And I think it would have been great for me personally to have this going through math, because then you could actually really like talk to this thing and be like, hey, can you explain why this function is doing this? Or like, what do I need as base to just say that, whatever, But for programming, I think a lot like Google, a lot like typewriting, like all these things, like you do sort of lose that fundamental knowledge if you don't practice it. And debugging, it can either be like much better with GPT or much worse, simply because it can kind of tell you and you don't have to go through that struggle, which is it definitely not the aim of debugging, but I think a certain part of it is like, intelligent thinking is sort of debugging. You kind of have to filter things down and separate concerns more and more. And by relying on GPT for that, it does, I think it takes away some of the nuance. But what I think is sort of like in not in vogue, but what is needed in demand is like, one, creativity, but also like thinking about design and designing the system, and having GPT like execute those designs is probably a big part of it. And so, or a big sort of gain. So I think understanding the design of systems and the fundamentals is really key. And so that's what I'm kind of trying to focus on. So I want to make sure that I'm putting out as much information around this to, ultimately learn it. But also, going back to my thesis, is that I think there's this thing called there's this idea called Coase's theory of the firm, which basically says like, the reason companies hire on people and bring full-time workers in is because the cost to go into the market is really high to find people to do a job, right? And the idea is that it's kind of like, hey, I studied business in university, so to hire somebody is actually like quite an investment, because the reality is that you have to invest this money into these people. And the first, I mean, it depends on obviously the role, but like the first little bit of any role, particularly junior developers or junior people within a company, a lot of it is actually training and getting them up to scope on your culture and your workflow and sort of your market, all of these things. And so, generally speaking, and I couldn't tell you the actual numbers on this or how they're actually measured, but like generally speaking, when you first hire somebody on, they're just not as productive. And so it's actually a cost to hire somebody, which obviously it is a cost, you have to pay them, but like there's a cost associated with hiring somebody. And so what I think GPT does is that it actually lowers that cost much more. And so my thesis is over the next decade or however many decades is that more and more people, programming, I can't remember where I heard this, but programming will kind of become perhaps similar to the music industry in that you have actors that are kind of like independent contractors that bring a brand with them. And you have a movie, you have like an entrepreneur that wants to build something, and so like, I'm going to assemble a team, right? So you want to get a producer, you want to get a director, those directors want to choose actors, such and such.